Welcome to the second presentation for Week 4 of GA103. We will continue our discussion of punctuation in relationships to typography, grid forms, and layout.
We will now look at grid forms and layout. Here we see an example of a well laid out 3-column grid. Notice how the space is used from page to page with imagery and text. This is a cookbook where a modular grid is being used. We will review these in a few slides. So what is a grid? A grid is an underlying structure used to guide the design and placement of elements on a page. They create unity and organization in a page and gives order to information. Grids vary depending on the designer and the project. They are used in newspapers and magazines to speed up layout and create a uniform, consistent appearance. When creating a grid, you want to do the following. Establish what the margins will be. Facing page grids are when the margins are mirror images of each other. Non-facing grids, page grids, are when the thumb space margins, left or right margin, where the page is held, are different on each page. You want to determine how many columns you will need. A 2-column grid is typically used for textbooks. A 3-column grid is typically for brochures and magazines and provides enough options. And a 5 and 6-column grid can provide flexibility. You also may want to make sure that you set an alley space size and determine the height and depth of columns using guidelines. Remember that text and/or images can go across 2 or more columns. White space above the type is referred to as the sink, and a large head and foot space allow the margin to feel planted or balanced and not too heavy. In this diagram, you can see the name for each space on a page spread and their uses. When using a grid, remember to be creative with your grid, yet don't break too far away from it. Grids are as creative as the designer and a useful tool, but the designer's style and intent of content should be evident in the layout. They are meant to help, not hinder the designer's ideas, so don't feel compelled to fill in every space of the grid. White space in a grid creates harmony with text-heavy areas, but be careful, too much white space appears empty. Here we see 2 variations of a 2-column grid. Remember that columns do not always have to be the same size. Here we see a variety of uses with a 3-column grid. Notice the different positions of both the text and images. In this example, a 4-column grid is being used. Notice the flexibility in the design and how the designer has decided to create visual interest while still maintaining the grid. Here we see a 2-column grid in a page spread. Notice the unity from page to page regardless of text.